In the Factor follow-up segment tonight, reaction from the other side to our interviews with Kellyanne Conway and Senator Rand Paul. Joining us now from Washington, Democratic Congressman Brad Sherman, who is also a senior member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Welcome, Congressman. First of all, did you listen to these interviews and your thoughts? Especially, let's talk a little bit about the health care and what you're hearing from Rand Paul from the Freedom Caucus saying, I'm not so sure I'm ready to sign on to Paul Ryan's plan.
Well, it sounds like what Rand Paul wants to do is repeal and not replace. He's saying the Republicans can't agree on what to replace Obamacare with. If they can't, they're not going to be getting Democratic votes for a repeal and replace program. So if they don't agree on a replacement and they go ahead with repeal, that's repeal and repeal. I'd like to see repeal and republish, or better yet, not repeal at all.
Or maybe those on the left are hoping that Obamacare sticks around for a while.
Well, absolutely. What we've seen since Obamacare was adopted is 16 million new private sector jobs at a time when employers were required to provide health coverage. Now, under all the Republican proposals, employers don't have to provide health coverage, and many of them won't. And what you saw before Obamacare was fewer and fewer employers were providing health coverage. Most Americans get their health coverage through their employer, and if you take away that employer mandate,
the only problem with that theory is, and it's not just theory going forward, Obamacare literally is collapsing from within itself because they backloaded some of the costs so it didn't look so expensive up front. Well, some of these bills are coming due now, this year, next year, and 2019, 2020.
Obamacare is working quite well, and you have the majority of Americans getting their health coverage from their employer because employers are required to provide it.
Yeah, but insurers are pulling out of the system. Next year there could be, I don't know, 5 or 6 states with only one insurer, and then maybe down the road there may be no one to insure these people.
The majority of Americans get their policies through their employer, and employers have dozens of choices.
The Democrats are all worried about the 15 or 20 million people who they say are covered under Obamacare who don't get insurance from their employer. If insurers say, we can't afford to do this anymore, you're going to have no health care for those people.
Well, certainly under the Republican plan, you're not going to have many insurance companies, probably none, because people aren't required to have the insurance until they get their cancer diagnosis. So who's going to sell insurance at any reasonable price to a pool like that? Obamacare is working well. We have an all-time high level of coverage, and the vast majority of people are getting that coverage through their employer. And if you take away the employer mandate, they're not going to have that coverage. And there you're talking about tens and tens of millions of Americans.
I want to pivot a little bit to Kellyanne Conway's interview. She talked somewhat about the leaks and the investigations going on. Your thoughts from the left of what's going on at Trump Tower, what went on, during the October, November, December timeframe?
Well, this wiretap charge comes out of thin air. It's part of the Trump approach of ready, shoot, aim. He announces and declares that Obama is sick or bad because Obama had his Trump Tower bugged, and then says, I don't have any evidence that it was bugged at all, but let's have an investigation. That's absolutely absurd.
Congressman, someone tapped the Trump Tower. Someone was going after some information from the Trump Tower.
If you read Breitbart, yeah, but there's certainly no evidence.
I read the New York Times. That's where I read. And January 20th, clearly on the front page, they said there was a wiretap to Trump Tower and that President Obama was notified of it.
I'm certainly not aware of that.
You know who wrote that? By the way, you know the author of that piece was Michael Schmidt, the same guy who exposed Hillary Clinton's private email server.
You can cite an individual article. The fact is that if Trump had proof that the Obama administration had bugged him, he would produce that proof. Instead, first he makes the charge, then he calls for the investigation. What we need is a special counsel or special prosecutor to look as to whether there was coordination between the Trump campaign and Russia.
Do you have proof? I mean, the Democrats have said, you know what, there's proof that the Russians coordinated with Donald Trump.
No, there is no proof.
I haven't seen proof of that either, and I'm hearing a lot of that accusation flying as well.
That's why you need the investigation. And if you want an investigation of both charges, fine. Let's have a special counsel investigate both Trump's charge. But the thing is, in real life, when you see somebody benefit from a theft, they usually had something to do with the thief. So there's a reason to do the investigation. Let's have an investigation, but let's not announce charges before the investigation.
I think that's what President Trump was calling for, an investigation on both of these charges.
It's got to be independent. It's got to be a special counsel.
I'm going to leave it right there. Thank you, Congressman, for joining us tonight.